Jefferson Robbins with NCWLIFE. If you live in the vicinity of the Methow Fire, you may have received one of these cards in the mail recently. That fire burned about 30 acres and put scores of homes under evacuation warnings. The Wenatchee Valley Fire Department now, alongside some partner agencies, wants to help rebuild the burned area so wildfires won't find such an easy purchase next time. I'm joined by the wildfire liaison for the Wenatchee Valley Fire Department, Hillary Hurd. Hello.
Hello.
And Joe Hill from the Cascadia Conservation District. How are you?
Good. Happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. Talking about the Methow Fire, as we said, about 30 acres were burned. It was mostly on the slope, and it was mostly this kind of scrub and sage land that is so common in the Wenatchee Valley foothills. So why does an area like that need the kind of post-fire treatment that we're talking about?
Well, it's in the wild and urban interface surrounding our community, and we're trying to find ways to do treatments in the shrub steppe. So for years they've been doing shaded fuel breaks and treatments of that nature in the forested areas. So we're trying to figure out practices that would be effective in the shrub steppe area of around the valley. And this is one of the first projects we think that have happened in north central Washington for treating it. And the idea is that you take out some of the heavy fuel load that we have with invasive species, cheatgrass and things like that, that seems to come back after a fire, and replace it with more fire resilient species such as the native bunch grasses and things like that, that is more resilient and fire adapted to the landscapes around the valley.
Joe, can you talk about how this post-fire treatment would work? You know, what kind of labor has to go into it?
So we're working with a company out of Moses Lake, BFI Natives, and they specialize in like native seed restoration. And so we had a consult with them. They looked at the burned area, realized it's steep, it's kind of inaccessible for equipment, and so they're going to be doing aerial treatments to knock back those annual invasives, and that'll occur this fall. And then 1 year from now, kind of based on weather windows, they'll do an aerial reseeding with those native bunch grasses and forbs.
So they're starting off with aerial treatment of herbicides, I take it? Okay.
Yep.
And so when we talk about the kind of species that we want to reestablish there, what kind of plants are we thinking about?
Idaho fescue,
Blue bunch grass.
blue bunch grass. Yeah, a lot of species that were native to the area and still occupy the area, but those invasive annuals have kind of, especially with the common occurrence of fire, have outcompeted them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, replacing them with those natives.
And so, Hillary, one of the things I think you mentioned was cheatgrass. And I've read about cheatgrass in the past. It's a really fire-friendly fuel, is that right?
Yeah, it's not native to the area. It was introduced by the settlers early on, and it's a very invasive species that comes through, and you'd be amazed at the purchase that it gets, the seed bank. So the idea in treating the burn scar this year is so the cheatgrass seed bank can't get established, because it's very difficult to eradicate once it is established. And then once you have a fighting chance against it, you bring back the natives, and they're more fire adapted and more fire resilient.
So the idea then, I guess, is if wildfire does take hold in this area again, but it's more native planted than it is invasive, the landscape will be more resilient, the fire might not spread as quickly. Is that the basic understanding?
Yeah, exactly. With those cheatgrasses in particular, it grows in such close proximity to each other. It's a continuous mat, and so, you know, fire is able to easily transfer and move and cover great distances, especially if it's windy. Whereas those bunch grasses, that fire has to hop from, you know, plant to plant, and also, you know, that cheatgrass has a really shallow root system. So in the spring, our hills around here are beautiful green, and then you notice they turn brown especially on the south slopes, a lot faster than anything else. And so that cheatgrass, it'll dry out a month or so earlier, and so it becomes receptive to fire that much earlier. And so, yeah, it's a species that kind of thrives on fire, and then with that, just common reoccurrence and self-perpetuating itself doesn't really give anything else a chance to take hold.
And while it's growing, as I understand it, cheatgrass tends to take up a lot of the soil moisture, which the natives then don't have
Exactly.
to try and grow back in.
Yeah, those shallow roots, they soak up that surface moisture as opposed to those bunch grasses that have a lot deeper roots, like significantly deeper, and so they'll hold water later into the season. So another benefit of them over cheatgrass and being less flammable.
And it also is helpful because the deeper root systems provide more slope stabilization. So one of the things that we're concerned about after a burn scar happens is debris flows and things like that, particularly on these steep slopes, because there's nothing there to stabilize the burn scar area. So the idea is if you do an herbicide treatment, which is very similar to what orchards get sprayed with around here, it's short lasting, but it does hopefully it hinders the growth of the establishment of that seed bank that cheatgrass would have and other noxious weeds, and then and then by reseeding after the fire, that's the key to it with native plants and forbs.
We've seen these kind of projects done elsewhere, but this would be a first for the Wenatchee Valley, is that right?
Yep, and that's the idea, is that we're partnering with agencies. So for this project, we've received funding through Cascadia, our partners, and from the state conservation funds to do treatment. And then we've also gotten funding from Washington State Department of Natural Resources Postfire Recovery Project. So we're excited to partner with areas because we're a fire district, and this landscape level treatment is new to us, but we recognize the need to do it both to protect the community and the landscape. And so there's really interesting partnerships being formed around this. We're even having presentations with Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and this is sort of an emerging science at this point.
For fire agencies, mostly your job is respond to the fire, stop the fire, and take care of the crisis that arises from the fire. So this is kind of the first time you would have been moving into the let's rebuild after the fire phase of things.
Yeah, and that's sort of our role in the community wildfire program. We try and do prevention and improve fire resiliency for our communities in the valley. So it's, we go out and we meet with homeowners, we do defensible space plans, and try and convince folks to make their homes safer, but this is a landscape level treatment. So the idea is that we're trying to protect the community and the landscape as a whole as part of that as well.
From Cascadia's point of view, Joe, are you seeing more interest in native plantings as a fire-wise prevention strategy? Do people come to you for consultation and say, how do I make my landscape, my property more defensible using native planting?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool in the toolbox. I think there's a subset of people that are really interested in either preserving or restoring native plants in the area because they're beneficial to the insects and flora and fauna. And then we've had at least one publication that I know we've partnered with Washington State Master Gardeners with, which is kind of a comprehensive guide of native plants and I guess non-native plants, but fire adapted, fire resistant to a degree species that you can plant in lieu of more flammable and sometimes just traditional plants and vegetation.
Is there anything else you think people should know about the project before we go?
I think we're really excited to, we've worked with BFI in the past. We have a report from them looking at the whole wild and urban interface around Wenatchee Valley, because on the Wenatchee side of our district, fires tend to burn into our communities and start in the wild and urban interface, and then on the Douglas County side, they tend to start within the communities and burn out into the wheat fields and get rather really large in acreage and things like that. So I think this is a tool that we could use in both communities. So this could be a treatment that we could do for burn scars throughout the valley.
Joe Hill with Cascadia Conservation District, Hillary Hurd, Wenatchee Valley Fire Department. Thanks a lot to both of you for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.